Hi, I am Baalaji Chippada and welcome back to my channel. In continuation of our series Python for Data Science, in today's video we will learn about indentations in Python, variables and multi-line statements. If you haven't watched our previous videos, please do check it out under the playlist Python for Data Science. So without any delay, let's get started. Now let's understand indentations. If you are familiar with the programming language like C, C++ or JavaScript, you might have used something like curly braces, and inside this you will have a piece of code that will get executed, right? In Python language, it is little bit different and we call them as indentations. Indentations is basically set of spaces that we will decide how much space we need to use. Okay, now, it is section of code like a function or a loop begins with the indentation line and stops when the first line that is not intended. I will explain this line in detail. And the next thing is you get to choose how much space that you want to use. In Python, for indentations, we usually use 4 spaces, but it's better to use tabs. Now let me remove all of this. Now let's execute this piece of cell. First, I will comment this second print by using a hash. We have learned this in the previous video. If you haven't watched it, please go and watch it out. And if I execute this, I will not get any errors and everything is executed and the output is there. What if I decrease the space here? And if I execute here, even now it is getting executed and without any issues we got the output. What if I keep only one space? Will that work? Yes, it depends. Like usually you have to choose how many spaces you want to use as indentations. If you don't want to decide this, usually we use 4 spaces as indentation in Python and it's an industry standard. Instead of typing 1 2 3 4 spaces, you can execute like this. What you can do is you can just click on tab. Right now, if I clicked on tab, it is giving me only 2 spaces. So how do you change this in this Google Colab? Go to tools, settings, editor, and indentations with spaces, make it to 4 because 4 is the industry standard. Now, if I remove all of these spaces and click on tab, it will by default get me 4 spaces. So this is much more easy to type and easy to use as well. So what if for the next line, I give only 2 spaces, but not 4 spaces. And if I execute this piece of code, I will get an error called indentation error because you started your code with 4 spaces of indentation and then the next you are using only 2 spaces. That is why Python is saying indentation error. And it is very easy to understand or debug the error in Python because Python is a very easy language to learn. So for the first line, it starts here, and for the next line, it starts here. This is 4 spaces, and you need to maintain these spaces for our along with your code. You cannot change the space in between. That is when you will get the indentation error. I hope that is clear for you. If I keep 4 spaces here by using a tab, I can if I execute this, it will not throw any errors because indentation is fine because we are following 4 spaces here and 4 spaces here and it is executed and we got the output. So if you ask me, I would recommend you to use tab as an indentation or 4 spaces because it's what industry follows. And indentations can be ignored in line continuation, but it's always good to have. And it makes the code much more readable. And everyone recommends you to follow industry standard indentations, which is 4 spaces. Now let's take an example. Let me comment this out. And if I execute this, I'm getting my output learning Python easy because if this loop is true, I'm getting into this. And trust me, guys, I will explain all of these loops, for loops, if else conditions in the later parts of the video. But for now, let's understand indentations. So can I write this piece of code without indentations? If you see, there are 4 spaces here and then 4 spaces here. And answer is yes. I can just say if true, without any indentations, write this in a single line. And once it is done, you separate it with a semicolon and give whatever you want. And you can write in a single line. And if I execute this, it will not throw any error. Because even though there are no indentations present inside Python by default, it is always recommended to use indentations because you can read the code much better like this way and everyone follows it. That so it's always recommended to use industry standard coding. Now, what is a statement and what are multi-line statements? Let's take an example. Balaji equal to 1 plus 2 plus 3. And if I execute this, it will not throw any error. What if I want to continue this addition, but not on the same line, but on the next line? So let's say tab, and let's say I will keep 4. If I execute this, what Python internally will do is it will treat it as a separate piece of code, but not a continuation of this line or statement. So what needs to be done so that Python will treat it as a single line or statement? So there is something called as backslash. At the end of every line, if you add a backslash, Python will treat the whole part into a single statement and it will execute without any errors. Now let's execute this piece of code. Balaji equal to, and if I print Balaji and everything is got executed without any issues because of this backslash. Now what if I remove this backslash? Now print execute. It shows syntax error because there is like Python compiler or interpreter doesn't understand what is happening in this piece of code. That is why we need these backslashes to continue our statement lines. And another way to use this multi-line statement is to use parenthesis. We can keep parenthesis here and here at the start and at the end of your statement, and you can execute and you will get the output. And this is also one of the way to declare variables, and we will understand variables in the next part, but I just want to tell you how you can add statements in a single line. Now there is one more way to declare the above sentence like this: a comma b comma c equal to 10 comma 20 comma 30. So what happens if I do this is Python will assign the value of 10 to a, value of 20 to b, and value of 30 to c. You don't need to do like this above. This is much easier to understand and it's an industry standard as well. If I execute this and let's say print a comma b comma c, if I execute this, it will print the values as 10, 20 and 30 because Python understood that we are trying to assign value of 10 to a, value of 20 to b, and value of 30 to c. That is how the statements work in Python. Now let's understand an important topic in Python, which is variables. If you remember our first video or second video, we talked about identifiers, right? And what are the rules of naming an identifier? A variable is basically an identifier, and whatever the rules that we have learned in identifiers, everything applies to variables as well. To sum it up, a variable can be any name between small a to z or a to z. It contains 0 to 9 values, and a variable cannot start with an digit, and you cannot use exclamations, at the rate, hashtag, special characters except underscore in variable naming. Now let's take this age equal to 25 and I'm printing age 25 years old. So what is happening here is we are giving a variable, sorry, what is happening is we are giving the value of 25 to a variable called age. So age contains or age points towards the value 25, and whenever we access this variable, let's say printing age, it will print the value that we defined or we allocated to. That's how variables work. Now now the important thing in Python is you don't need to declare the data type of variables. If you are familiar with language like C, you will say int a equal to 10. What this does is you are saying store a value of 10 inside a and the value should be integer. That's how it works in C language. But in Python is a dynamic programming language. You don't need to specifically declare the type of data type that you are saving it in a variable. So let's understand here. If you see, I am saying assign a value of 10 to A and value of 5.5 to B and value ml as C. If you know a little bit of data types, 10 is an integer and 5.5 is a float value and ml is a string. But I'm saving all of these parameters inside A and B and C, but I haven't specifically or explicitly mentioned the data type of these variables. By default, Python will understand what data type you are providing into a variable and it will save it in the backend. Now let's execute this. It will give you the value. So storage locations, one of the important topics in Python as well. So what is happening in this cell? You are saying A equal to 3. That means you are saving your value of 3 in your RAM and you are pointing the variable A towards that location, right? And I'm doing print of ID of A. What does this ID returns? ID returns the storage locations, which is 133 and whatever it is. This is the same location in which 3 presents. Now when I say y equal to 3, does Python again store a value of 3 somewhere and point y towards it, x location? No, because it's a waste of space, right? So what Python does is, because 3 is already present at this location, it will point out the variable y towards the existing location. So if I execute the id of y, which is the same value of A, it will show you the same output because both are pointing towards the same location. Now let's execute this. If you see, the A is pointing towards this location, and if I say y equal to 3 and execute, y is pointing towards the same location because both are containing the same values. What if I say y equal to 5 and let's execute this? So what happens in this case? Initially you have 3 and y is pointing towards 3, but now you have done y equal to 5. So what it does is it takes another location 5 and instead of pointing y equal to 3, it will point y to this one. It will not point to the location where 3 is present because you are overriding the variable with the value which is not before. And if I execute this, it will show you the location which is other than the above. Is that clear? If you have any queries so far in this section or in this video, please let me know in the comment section below and we will sort it out. And that's all for this video. And if you like what you are watching, please hit that subscribe button and click that bell icon to get notified daily. And we will meet in the next video. See ya.